everybody and welcome back to the channel. For today's review we're going to be checking out the Transformers Studio Series Buzzworthy Bumblebee Voyager class N.E.S.T Bonecrusher, and I am just as confused as you guys are. Bonecrusher apparently died in the first movie, yet has survived to make it into Revenge of the Fallen, and then has acquired a N.E.S.T vehicle mode and has become an Autobot. How crazy is that? Well, apparently the backstory behind this guy is that this is actually Bonecrusher that we see towards the tail end of the Revenge of the Fallen movie. You know, that massive upscaled version of himself that is decimating the RC sisters on the battlefield? Well, this is apparently him, just however much earlier on in that movie, acquiring a N.E.S.T vehicle mode, being disguised as an Autobot so that he can infiltrate them. And I mean, it's a cool concept. I'm a sucker for Bayverse, and especially Bayverse repaints, and considering that we haven't seen this mold since 2019, this is a fantastic opportunity for those of you who sadly missed out on it. So let's get stuck straight here into the details, and here we have Bonecrusher, and he just looks crazy. I mean, I love my Bayformers. The designs have always been just so out there. I know there's some of you out there who think that they're ugly messes, but I mean, check out the mechanical detail. The head sculpt, as per tradition with this line, is just incredible, and the paint deco is amazing. Now, I'm not too sure whether or not this is a happy accident, but one of the eyes has just kind of died. It's not been painted. Is this an indication that Bonecrusher did in fact lose his eye when in battle with Optimus? I guess it would make it a little more accurate had he not had a head, but still very nicely painted and sculpted. As you guys can see, for the arms, very long, typical of what you would expect from the Bayverse designs. I think they look so cool, and for some strange reason you can actually detach the forearm away from kind of the outer armor. That was something I noticed on my original version, and even to this day has always puzzled me. Not too sure why that is an option, but as we just come down here to the legs, as per tradition with Bayformers, a mess, but a great mess. I mean, the amount of detail and just things kind of sticking and flaring all over the place to me is so cool. And this was essentially a roller skating Decepticon. I mean, this guy was skating down the highway to tackle Optimus, and he created for one of the coolest scenes in that 2007 movie. As we come around to the back, really and truly no excess vehicle mode kibble. He does have the landmine claw that again we see him use to tackle Prime with in the film, and it would have been so cool had they actually swapped these out for kind of the larger ones that he had in the film, but I think they were trying to stick to the vehicle mode accuracy more than anything, so can kind of get past that. But as far as articulation goes, sadly it's rather limited for the head. So despite us getting a hinge joint left to right and a rotation, this guy cannot look up and down, which would have been so cool, especially getting him into some of those more dynamic poses. The arms are awesome. They can hinge up and down, as well as here at the actual shoulder. For rotation, we do also get a rotation out of the elbow, bend here as well. Like I said previously, that detaching joint, which I still have no idea why it exists. The hands are actually articulated, which is super cool for a Studio Series Voyager. Sadly, nothing at the waist, which is a shame, but the hips can kick forwards that far, so you can definitely have him running after Prime. They can also kick out to the sides, rotation at the thigh, 90-degree bend out of the knee, and surprisingly, an ankle pivot, which I thought was really cool. And despite this guy essentially being a roller skating Decepticon, he has no issues at all in standing. So very nicely designed. It would have, however, been so cool had they given him some form of weaponry. Those blasters that we see him firing towards the end of the RTF movie certainly wouldn't have gone amiss, but overall, a very nicely done looking repaint. Now, turning to a few comparisons, here we have the N.E.S.T Bonecrusher compared alongside the original 2007 Studio Series release, and call me crazy, but I actually think I prefer this new N.E.S.T version over the kind of very bright beige that we saw initially. I mean, the darker deco, in my opinion, just looks so much more sinister, and if this thing was charging towards me on the highway, I would be absolutely hitting that pedal and zooming across it, as he really does look pretty intimidating. But mold-wise, they're identical. They haven't changed anything, and like I said previously, it would have been so cool to have gotten a weapon so that we could have smacked it right in that mech tech port. Here we also have him compared alongside the leader class, the Fallen Voyager class Optimus Prime, and he's just absolutely itching to take Bonecrusher's face. Deluxe class Revenge of the Fallen Bumblebee, and finally the N.E.S.T Bumblebee that we got released earlier on in this year. And I mean, awesome color deco. They basically are the same, with perhaps the N.E.S.T Bumblebee being a little more metallic silver when in comparison to the darker plastic that we've got on this guy, but really terrific looking repaints. I know there's a Ratchet coming out, and I'm hoping that we can actually see some kind of Optimus Prime in this line, as I think that would look really cool. Now, turning to transformation, just as it's something that I haven't showcased over on the channel since the Dark Ages, this thing is actually quite complex, I'm not gonna lie. So to kickstart things off, come around to the back, take these sections and rotate them around, we can then straighten this all out and just snap that there into place. Hinge this to the back. What I would then recommend to do would be to take the shoulder, rotate this around, and then hinge it up just like this. And then we can proceed to collapse the elbow in upon itself. And then for some finishing touches, at least for this side, take this panel and just click it there into place. Now, I personally would recommend to just hinge this butterfly joint out just to allow for some additional clearance whilst we're doing the other side. So rotate that up just like this and collapse that elbow in upon itself, straighten this component out and snap it in there. And now we come to the legs, which I'm going to be honest and say are by far the most intricate part about the conversion in general. So you're going to want to take this section here and just tuck it under there just like this. What we can then do is rotate this section out just like so, and do the same here for the opposite side. That will then allow us to compress these fully in if you haven't done so already. We can then now rotate at the thigh on both sides and take the upper torso and kind of this waist belt and detach them from one another. We can then rotate the hip pads in like this, and then these sections will actually come around just like so, and then you're just going to want to straighten that out. Do the same here for this side just like this, and now actually bend here at the knee so that you're left with something which at the moment is looking along the lines of this. We can then tab these two halves together, so just shoot those in there. And now comes a part of the transformation which personally I've never been a massive fan of. We're going to want to get the head into this hollow cavity without these crest pieces bumping into anything. So take this section here and detach it from the torso, and then at the same time rotate these sections here in upon themselves, and basically just slide that head into the hollow cavity and then close these arms up. Now, I've always been rather perplexed as to why this is an asymmetrical S design instead of just a dead straight line. That is definitely something rather bizarre. And then what you're going to do is basically come here to the underside, and these tabs are going to slide into some slots here on what were basically the wrists of the robot mode. So let's just slide those in there, and then these tiny little tabs here will scoot underneath, and then this big tab will snap into that peg. So click that in there. Come around to this side and rinse and repeat, just making sure that everything is solidified. We can then take the hands, compress those down, take this front section, ratchet this up until it actually locks into place, and then here with the land mining tool, we just hinge that to the back, come around to the underside, and this section is actually going to slide into two tabs, just clicking that there into place. And there we have Bonecrusher fully transformed up into his pretty cool N.E.S.T militaristic vehicle mode. And at least to me, this is specifically where these N.E.S.T repaints come out to shine. I mean, Bonecrusher looks fantastic, and it's all got to do with the attention to detail. So as we take a look at the front of the alt mode, very nicely painted. I think this all looks fantastic. The window detail also looks great, but I love how he actually has All Hail Megatron written along the side, which I think is something that we saw in the first movie when the Decepticons are kind of communicating with each other. Blackout does say All Hail Megatron, so I thought that was a nice carryover. And as we actually take a look behind this faux wheel, you can see the Decepticon logo. So truly, Transformers, robots in disguise. That is really cool. And I guess we have a phony Autobot logo slap bang here with the N.E.S.T detail. That looks great. And even as we come around to the rear of the vehicle, very nicely painted. I love how this all looks. And just in general, in terms of a militaristic truck, this thing looks nuts. We do get the land mining tool here, which can flip up some cars, some Decepticons or Autobots, I guess. In this case, very nicely detailed. Although one thing I've noticed on my original copy and on this guy is that if you actually want to have this rolling on the ground, the hands do have a tendency to scrape. So do just slightly lift them up and you should be good to go. But in all, very nicely done. Now, as we come back here to some comparisons, honestly guys, this is so nostalgic. It's literally throwing me back to those Michael Bay days where we would get countless repaints of live action movie figures. So on the right we have the original Bonecrusher, and of course the left the new N.E.S.T version. And much like bot mode, I just think visually the N.E.S.T version looks a lot better. It has a lot more detail, especially with some of the tampos that we have along the side, and everything about it has basically been painted. So some details which would go missing on the original version, such as the rear lights, have been fully painted on this guy. The same can also be said for the front indicator lights. It's just a very nicely done repaint, and like I said previously, Hasbro, keep giving us these as I definitely will be lapping them up all day long. And again, here we have him alongside the N.E.S.T Bumblebee, and I'm loving the vehicle modes that they're choosing for this N.E.S.T program. Let me know down below, who do you guys think will be next? I guess we have to specifically look at some militaristic vehicles, but here we have N.E.S.T Bumblebee compared alongside Bonecrusher. So far, so good. And wrapping up on this review for the Transformers Studio series Voyager class N.E.S.T Bonecrusher, I'm a sucker for the live action movies. As you guys all well know, I love the Bay films, so to get some repaints of some older Bayverse figures, I'm absolutely going to be picking them up. And I think in the case of Bonecrusher, this is a great opportunity not only to get the mold, but for those collectors who perhaps missed out on the original version. I mean, this guy has definitely become very sought after since his initial release in 2019, and I'd go as far as saying that this deco is better than the actual version that appeared on screen. I really like the attention to details, specifically in the vehicle modes, and I think vehicle modes is something that we as collectors should be looking at to kind of give us an indication as to what other N.E.S.T vehicles Hasbro have in store for us. All of them so far have kind of had this militaristic vibe, so I guess we should be looking at the likes of Brawl and definitely Blackout. So I really like this guy. I do think he's only going to appeal though to a very specific niche portion of collectors, especially if you own the original version, but if you don't own the original version, then I can definitely see this one being one worth picking up. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Would you guys like to see this N.E.S.T line continue? And if you would, what characters would you like to see make an appearance? As always, I thank you all so much for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.